How do you start a marketplace when you have no customers? Or a dating app that has no users? Platforms are amazing businesses because they can grow by themselves. But getting them started, that's the massive challenge that we're covering today.
Hello and welcome to the Tech for Non-Techies podcast. I'm your host, Sofia Matveeva. If you're a non-technical founder building a tech product or adding AI to your business, you're in the right place. Each week, you'll get practical strategies, step-by-step playbooks, and real-world case studies to help you launch and scale a tech business without learning to code. And this is not another startup show full of jargon, venture capital theater, or tech bro bravado. Here, we focus on building useful products that make money without hype and without code. I've written for the Harvard Business Review and lectured at Oxford, London Business School, and Chicago Booth. So you are in safe hands. I've also helped hundreds of founders go from concept to scalable product. And now it's your turn. So let's dive in.
Hello, smart people. How are you today? A new student who is working on a platform business idea was talking to me about how he's going to acquire his first users. And this is a really good thing because what you need to be doing when you are working on your original product development in the, really early idea testing stages, you need to be thinking about, okay, so when I do launch this thing, how am I going to get my first users? Because leaving marketing and leaving user acquisition, as you have previously heard, till the last minute basically usually leads to disaster. He asked me, how do I get people to use my platform? And this episode is the answer. I actually did a series on platforms 4 years ago, and this is one of 4 episodes from that series. So if you're building a platform or a marketplace, go back and listen to episodes 90 through to 94, and I've linked them in the show notes. Today, you're going to learn 6 proven methods to solve the chicken and egg problem in platforms. So you'll hear how Airbnb, Facebook, and Amazon and others got their first users when they literally had nothing. So let's dive in. We're going to cover something that my clients and students ask me all the time, which is, how do I get a platform started? So for example, if you've decided to make a dating app, and I'm going to use a heteronormative example here because it's just easier to explain for me. So if you're going to launch a dating app, how do you launch it if it has no men and no women on it? You need both to get started. But if you don't have men, will women be interested? No. If you don't have any women, will men want to create profiles in your dating app? No. This is the same with Uber. If there are no drivers, why would passengers download the app? Or with marketplaces. If there are no sellers on Etsy, why would buyers go to the site? So let's answer this today. This is known as the chicken and egg problem in platforms. There's actually a really good chapter on this in a book called Platform Strategy: How Networked Markets Are Transforming the Economy and How to Make Them Work for You. I've linked to the book in the episode page. Honestly, I found it so useful. Today, I'm going to go through 6 ways to start your platform. The book actually goes through 8 ways to start a platform, but I don't agree with the other 2 that they've got. One of them is literally just kind of a duplicate of one of the 6, and another one, just doesn't work very well from my experience of actually creating and scaling platforms. So this is why I'm going to go through the 6. But there will be a lot of information here with examples, and you will probably forget some of it, which is normal. So this is why I've actually written these definitions and examples on the aforementioned episode page, which you'll find at techfornontechies.co/chicken. That's chicken for chicken and egg. So go to the episode page to get all of these definitions. Remind yourself of the case studies. The link to the episode page with all of the definitions and examples is in the show notes. So let's begin with method 1 of 6. And that's what I call the pipeline to platform conversion. Remember how last week we talked about pipeline businesses, which is what most traditional businesses are. And we also talked about platform businesses. So last week, we talked about you either selling wine from your own vineyard or inheriting a market square from your uncle Oedipus. As you might remember from last week's episode, in a pipeline business, you make a thing and then you sell it to me. And so the value goes one way. Some platforms originally start as pipeline businesses and then they become platforms. So, for example, Amazon began as a retailer. Remember, it just sold books. So first they were a traditional pipeline business, but they were just doing it online. But essentially it was a pipeline business. And they ended up getting lots of traffic to Amazon.com, which basically is to say that they had lots of interested buyers, but they only had one seller themselves. So you see, pipeline business. Then Jeff Bezos decided to allow other people to sell their stuff on Amazon. And then they launched Amazon Marketplace. Now, as a customer, I can go on Amazon and buy stuff from Amazon and from other sellers. So basically, in this example, in this pipeline to platform conversion, just know that if you already have one side of the platform working and interested and sorted, you could attract the other. Method 2 of our 6 is using a company that already has the user base that you want. And ideally, this would be a partnership where you both win, or at least where the partner agrees. But sometimes you gotta be a bit more Machiavellian, as my next example shows. So in the early days of Airbnb, the founders obviously had the same chicken and egg problem because every platform goes through it. They were wondering, how do we get people on our site to rent a place to stay if we have nobody offering their places to stay? So instead of investing in paid ads or in social media, they started manually reaching out to people who were advertising their places on Craigslist. And literally they would write to them and say, hey, I've seen that you're advertising on Craigslist. Do you want to list your place on Airbnb as well? And this was manual and it was tedious, but it worked. And now here comes the Machiavellian bit. After they saw that this was working, they wanted to scale it. So they coded an automated tool that reached out to new Craigslist postings automatically. So if you had posted your place for rent on Craigslist, you would get this email from Airbnb. I'm going to read it to you. So, hi, reposting your listing from Airbnb to Craigslist increases your earnings by $500 a month on average. Click here to repost a couch in the Mission in one click. This is just an example. Obviously, people took this option and signed up because, wouldn't you? If you're already listing your place on Craigslist and then you basically get told that you could make more money for doing the same thing, wouldn't you do it? I sure would. So obviously, people took this option, signed up, and basically led to viral growth. So now let's move on to method 3 of 6. And this is called seeding content. And seeding content basically means producing content that sparks people's interest and then gets them to interact. And my dear smart people, you're not going to like the example that I'm going to give you here, but it is a real example. Most dating apps usually create fake profiles to draw in initial users. If you download a new dating service, the hot person you're speaking to might actually be a product manager called Bob, who's flirting simultaneously with 20 different people under 4 different profiles. This doesn't happen in mature dating platforms because it doesn't need to, because once it's a mature platform, people are already uploading their profiles and reaching out to each other. But in the early stages, this is very common. A less dramatic example is Quora. That's a question and answer site. The Quora founders wrote a bunch of questions and then basically answered their own questions just using different profiles. This then attracted people who had the same questions and were searching for the answers on Google because then they could go and read the answers in Quora. And this also showed them how to interact on the platform. Basically, it showed them what to expect when you post a question. So people started posting their own questions. And actually, this is a really great example of platform governance, which is something that we will cover in next week's lesson in this mini-series. And here, I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask you, are you finding this useful? Are you learning from me in this podcast? If yes, do you know what would be a really nice thing to do? Leaving a rating and a review on iTunes. I'm teaching you all of this for free, which I love doing, but I would really love your help. It really does help me if you leave a rating and a review on iTunes, because doing this helps this podcast and my work get discovered. And honestly, this really helps me a lot. So if you're listening to this free podcast and if you're learning a lot from me for free, do a nice thing and leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcast. Thank you. I love you. Now that you've done that, which I assume you have, let's talk about method 4 of 6 to solve the chicken and egg problem in platforms. And that's basically bringing influencers to your platform by giving them some sort of incentive. Here, you're usually looking for people who already have a big following somewhere else, and you are basically paying them to bring their followers to your platform. So, for example, earlier this year, Joe Rogan was offered $100 million to bring his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, which is currently on Spotify, to a new platform called Rumble. Joe Rogan didn't actually take this deal, and his podcast is still on Spotify, but I wanted you to see this strategy in action. And what's interesting is that clearly the CEO of Rumble thought that Joe's following and all of the PR that Rumble would get if Joe actually joined was worth $100 million to Rumble. And here I want you to see something interesting. All of these strategies are marketing strategies, and as far as I'm concerned, they should be seen as part of the marketing budget. Because if you think about it, what is marketing? Marketing is basically investing in your company's growth. But we tend to have this outdated view of marketing, which is basically that marketing is all about TV ads and advertising on freeways. But from this episode alone, you've seen that, Bob, the product manager who's pretending to be Heidi, Anna, Tracy, and Janet on a dating app, still needs to get paid to do it, right? So that's marketing. And this shows you that in tech product development, the lines between product and marketing are really blurred. And this is normal, but it just requires a mindset shift for the non-techies who are used to a much more siloed approach, because traditionally product development and marketing in traditional businesses tended to be really quite separate. Now, let's move on to method 5 of 6, and that is called producer evangelism. And that's what platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo do. Under this strategy, your focus is on creating a service for producers so they come to your platform and bring their customers. So, for example, Indiegogo began as a way for people with creative ideas to get funded. So the producers in this case are people with ideas for films and documentaries. And obviously their talents are in making movies, not in making websites that help them raise funding. So by providing a way for these creators, for these filmmakers, to easily upload information about their projects and collect money, Indiegogo was attracting the producers, which is the filmmakers, who would then share their Indiegogo page with their own friends and family and their followings. And so think about this. So for users, imagine your friend shares their Indiegogo page, and you might go on it, and then you would fund your friend because you're a nice person. You're a nice person who leaves me Apple podcast reviews, and you fund your friend's project. So that's the kind of person you are. So you fund your friend, and then you see what other interesting projects there are on the platform. And you might fund a couple of other projects. Maybe you'll give most of the money to your friend, but maybe you'll kind of, leave $5 and $10 here and there on other documentaries. And thus, the platform starts growing. A company called PartySlate actually does this for events professionals. They link venues and vendors and party planners to people who are planning events. So basically, if you've got a wedding or a bar mitzvah, or if you're planning an event for your company, you would go to PartySlate. And you can actually hear my interview with the CEO of PartySlate, Julie Novak, where she talks in detail how she used this very strategy to grow her platform. So it has worked for Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and also you can get the details in the episode on PartySlate. The link to the episode is on the episode page, techfornontechies.co/chicken, or wherever you're listening to your podcast, just scroll back to How I Built a Party Platform. That's what the episode is called, and it's from July 2021. Now, Last but not least is method 6, which is called the micro market strategy. By the way, you really don't need to remember the names. Like, who cares if you remember the names? You just need to know about the different methods. So remember the examples and forget about the actual names. It doesn't matter so much. So with the micro market strategy, what you need to remember is that with this strategy, you start by targeting a teeny tiny market where people are already interacting. And then you basically replicate that market. This is exactly what Facebook did when they launched in the tiny market that was basically Harvard College. So in this example, Harvard students were already interacting with each other offline. And then essentially Mark Zuckerberg and his co-founders just took that online. In this example, in the micro market strategy, even if Facebook just got 500 people to sign up and interact with each other, this would have been a huge success because it's sort of people from different dorm rooms and people from different years checking out what everybody else is doing and looking at each other's photos. And these people already know each other, or at least they know of each other. So basically they were curious what everybody was up to, which is why engagement was so high. But imagine if Facebook just launched worldwide, and they got the same number of users to sign up. So they got 500 users to sign up by literally just doing a traditional marketing campaign and just advertising, come and use Facebook and advertising it on freeways. There would have been no interaction really whatsoever because, they might have been initial interest because people would be like, oh, what's this? Let's have a look. But once they see that actually all of these people on it, all of these other 499 people are completely different, they're not connected to them and they're not, living lives that they're particularly interested in, like you're just not going to carry on interacting on it. So the platform would have died. The micro market strategy worked for Facebook, and that was a long time ago, but it still works today and companies are using it today still. Actually, Tinder used this in its early days as well. And this is also how local neighborhood networks start and then spread across cities and then spread across countries. So in this week's lesson, you have seen how to use growth hacking and product thinking to solve the chicken and egg problem on platforms. And also, you see that while this is a legitimately hard problem to solve, it can be solved, and lots of companies have solved it. So if you're working on a platform, keep on trying these methods and keep on iterating, and just know that, yes, this is a difficult problem, but it is a perfectly solvable problem. Next week, we're going to talk about how to create a platform where people interact in a positive way and actually do things that you want them to do. This is another hard problem in platforms because think about it. If you're inviting millions of people to interact with each other on the internet without your direct supervision, because that would be impossible, the likelihood that someone is going to do or say something really awful is really high. I mean, you have been on the internet. Some parts of the internet are not a friendly place. So while you can't prevent every bad thing happening, you can do a lot to set your platform up to reduce negative interactions and to reduce abuse. And this is actually really important because platforms that have lots of negative interactions, not only are they actually having lawmakers kind of legislate against them, but also people generally don't often want to stay there. And, the aim of a platform is to somehow then make money. And if the platform is really kind of seen as dangerous and abusive, people don't want to pay that business money in general. So this is why it's such an important business concept, as well as, you don't want to give birth to a business or to a platform that just makes the world worse, because why? You don't want to do that. So this is called platform governance, and we are going to cover it next week. If you found that useful, which I assume you did because you're still here, then go back and listen to this series in episodes 90 through to 94, because honestly, they are so useful. You'll learn why platform businesses like Facebook become really successful and how to set them up so people are nice to each other on these platforms from the start, because some platforms got it really right and others, well, they're getting it really wrong. And on that note, have a wonderful day, and I shall be back in your delightful Smarty List next week. Ciao!